Hey guys, Hyped here. I got another Mage deck. It's sort of a Giants Freeze Mage deck. It only has 2 Molten Giants, but you know, you could duplicate them. But it's based off the old show of the Giants Mage. When someone gave me this list and it was something like this. I had a Novice Engineer and a Sylvanas. But I was finding that Sylvanas, as a mage, you can't really punish someone if they ignore your Sylvanas. Like, you can't threaten a brawl. All we have is the Sun Fury. If they ignore Sylvanas, we just taunt it up and force them to deal with it. But we don't always have that because it's only 1 in our deck, so it was kind of unreliable. So I took out the Novice because it wasn't doing much, and I needed more help early game so I didn't get run over. So I got the Explosive Sheep in, pretty simple, 2 mana, 2 for 2 mana. Not a big change. And then since the Sylvanas was kind of iffy, I've been going with Toshly. Toshly's a little harder to ignore as a 5/7 because you can trade and just live versus whatever they throw on the board, was the 5/5 from Sylvana. If they only throw 1 minion on the board, you kind of have to just trade into it sometimes. It's annoying. So that's where we got the new name from, because when this guy comes out in the field, he says show them no mercy, because he's no. But yeah, so here's the deck. If you're not familiar with how the deck works, you kind of like stall early game. We only have 1 Frost Nova, 1 Doomsayer, 1 Sheep, just like a little bit of defense, and then we hope to duplicate some, depending on the matchup, we can duplicate whatever we want. If it's a super aggressive deck, we can duplicate Sheeps or Doomsayers. Otherwise, we normally just duplicate a Water Elemental, because that's usually Mad Scientist. You get the secret out, then you get the Water Elemental out on turn 4, you duplicate that. But, you know, duplicating Belcher is great against a little slower matches where you need the taunts. And then you can even duplicate some of the big guys like Molten Giants, Alexstrasza, or Rag, if you think you'll have enough mana to cast them multiple times. Toshly you have to be super careful with, because as you can see, when you use him, he adds, you use him, you lose a card, but you'll gain a card, and you'll gain 1 more and he dies, so you'll net 1 card. And if you have duplicate on, you'll duplicate him back, you'll throw 3 more cards in your hand, and then you'll draw a card and then the card they gave you 5, which means, that might sound confusing, but basically what it means is, if you have duplicate up, if you have more than 6 cards, if you play Toshly, then there's a chance you overdraw your next, and you'll lose a draw, because create a spare part, create 2 more Toshlys, when he dies it creates another spare part, and then you draw a card, you lose it. So you have to be super careful with that. But yeah, he's in there, and he gives you spare parts that you can use with Antonidas, because it's kind of hard to use parts with him. You have to like save Frostbolts when you don't want to, or Frost Novas. You can't really cast Arcane Intellect with them, because you don't really want to be holding on to Arcane Intellect that long. But yeah. So we have we have really strong mid-game creatures in the Belcher and the Water Elemental, and then we'll be like slowly falling behind against most decks, but then once we pop out the Molten Giants, maybe taunt them up, maybe duplicate them, but then we'll start to come back. And we have Ice Block on, so we try to set up a board where our board is bigger than theirs, and then their only choice is like to all in us, and they give up the board and they go for face, and our boards are getting stronger and stronger, and then we just heal ourselves back up to 15, clear their board, and stabilize, and they can't really do anything. There's also 2 Flame Strikes, so you know, you could grind out a lot of people, just keep AoEing down their stuff, and win, yeah. It'll beat most slow decks. I lost to like a Rebirth, Ancestral Spirit, Kel'Thuzad, Sylvanas, Cairn, Shaman, but only because I didn't know what I was facing. Other than that, usually you'll beat most slow decks. The Big Game Hunter, it's kind of weird to have like 1 Big Game Hunter and 1 Polymorph, like why not just have 2 Polymorphs? There's a small potential you can duplicate them, but it's not really something to count on. But I found that just like the 3 mana Big Game Hunter allows you to make some plays you wouldn't be able to do with Polymorph, especially when like Dr. Boom comes out. You need like all the mana you can spare to handle him. And actually this deck is undefeated versus Handlock so far, so which is interesting, because the old Giants Mage was really weak to Handlock. But yeah, let's see what else is there. Healbot, nice. Usually don't play it until after you've thrown down the Molten Giants in your hand. Sometimes you're forced to play them early. Yeah, against aggressive decks you can duplicate Sheep. Only 3 secrets total, so kind of slim. You never want to duplicate a Mad Scientist. Yeah, that's the deck. We'll go over the matchups real quick. Druid's really tough because they can deal with your Doomsayer, but we only have 1, so we're not that crazy about we're not all in on getting Doomsayer off, but by the time it gets down to Flame Strike range, all their guys are like have more health than Flame Strike, so Flame Strike isn't that good against them either. Polymorph isn't that great against them because like their minions like already charge and just hit you. But they're still beatable. Our main key in beating Druids is the Molten Giants, and they will usually Big Game Hunter the first one. But once you get the second one and the Ragnaros and the Alex out, that's when you start to win. and you could really swing it around. Like, you'll have a board, and if you manage to build a board, even though you're super low health with Ice Block on, and their board is empty, then they'll just combo you, go for face, pop the block, but then you'll have the board and you Alex yourself and you win. Hunter's pretty hard. The Freeze Mage deck I just showed on the site a few days ago is better versus Hunter than this, but this has a small chance to beat Hunter. It's got the Belcher, the Sheeps and stuff, and the Ragnaros really helps. And they don't run Flare, so you don't have to worry about your Ice Block popping. And the NT kill bot actually comes into play a lot. And just the Belcher is mostly the key MVP. Mech Mage is super tough because they do so much damage early that you can't stop. And because like the Explosive Sheep doesn't really kill their guys because they all have like 3 HP, like the Snow Choker, the Mech Warper, the Anoyotron, and the Spider Tank, the Blast Mage. Everything lives through the Sheep. I found that duplicating Sheep is really good against them though. It helps make the breakpoint. But once you stabilize, you can't really freeze their board because then they can just shoot you with spells. So that's why Mage is super hard. And then you Flame Strike their board, but then they just Azure Drake and Yeti the following turn. It's super annoying. Paladin's also pretty difficult because the Muster is hard for us to handle. We have the Sheep. Ideally, Coin Acolyte's pretty good. Doomsayer's pretty good, but not that reliable because they have silences sometimes. So Paladin's pretty hard, but definitely winnable. Priest is pretty easy matchup. They just don't have enough Shadow or Dust. You just keep slamming 8/8s they can't keep up. And their Shadow Madnesses aren't that good against you if you play carefully. And they just can't keep up with the value of just even just duplicating Water Elementals and Belches is too much for them usually, as long as you don't get run over early. Rogue is pretty easy. Giant's Freeze Mage used to be slightly favored against Miracle Rogue back in the day, and they'd only lose when Rogue had really insane openings and starts like Gadget, Double Prep, Conceal on turn 5, and then you'd lose. But since Rogue is slower now, that's not possible, then you don't really have to worry about them bursting you down. So you'll get to set up, you'll get the huge value of your Alex and your Moltens, and they just can't sap everything. They want to sap Water Elementals. That's when they'll be burning their saps. So by the time you get to your big guys, they won't have sap anymore. Shaman's pretty tough because if they know you have duplicate up, they can hex your guy and kill it and just give you frogs as your duplicate instead of the actual creature. So you have to be really careful of that. I'll talk about that in the match. I've had a best play around that. But Shamans are pretty tough just because they can burst you down and they can Earthshock past your taunts and just do a ton of damage. But definitely beatable. I'll talk about that in the matchup videos. Handlock I'm undefeated against, which is kind of surprising, but it makes sense. You just have to be careful and not give them Molten Giants, and you just kill all their stuff and you fatigue them almost. Zoo's a little harder. I'd rather, if I knew I was playing Zoo, I'd rather be playing Freeze Mage, but it's still possible as a Giant's Mage to beat Zoo. It's pretty tough though. I'll talk about it in the videos. Warrior's kind of hard because overall I say the Mage is 65% against Warrior, but Warrior can it's still a really hard matchup. They can just kind of run you over. Even though you have all this value, you have all these duplicated Water Elementals and Belchers, you might not have time to play them, especially if they get a Act Like Cruel Taskmaster start. They just kill all your stuff for free basically while they're drawing cards. Every Warrior I've faced has had both Executes, both Shield Slams, and the Big Game Hunter in the top half of their deck, and they just kill all my threats and I can't keep up. But you should be able to grind them out. Just be careful about Brawl. And if you get good duplicates off, you will win. But they can kind of just rush you down and kill you if they get a quick Alex into Grom, something like that, and your block isn't really that great. But yeah, hard matchup. So yeah, overall it's pretty good on ladder right now. I've been bouncing up and down from the bottom ladder all the way up to 20 Legend was the highest I got recently with this, which is pretty good considering Zoo is such a hard matchup, and Hunter's pretty hard too. But yeah, it's a really fun deck. Here's all the cards. It's super long because there's so many one-ofs. But yeah, I'll go into the matchup videos now.